You suck. That's the voice that I would have in my head whenever I set out to do a bunch of things and then ended up doing none of them because I just procrastinated the whole time. And I would feel like no matter how many personal development books I read or productivity videos I watched, I just couldn't stop procrastinating. I couldn't get things done, and most of the time I couldn't even get started. But that all stopped when I made these 3 mental reframes that I'm going to share with you in this video. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Jorge Calauz. I am a business lawyer based in Florida, specializing in high stakes lawsuits. And in this channel, we explore the principles and the strategies to help us live more productive, meaningful, and fulfilling lives. Mental reframe number 1. Your problem is not procrastination. Your problem is your environment. I'm a very big believer that one of the best ways, probably top 3 ways of changing human behavior is by changing the environment that human is in. There's actually a really cool study that depicts this. A while back, a group of scientists put a group of fleas in a jar and then they closed the lid on that jar. Now, naturally, with the lid on the jar, the fleas couldn't jump past where the lid is. But the interesting thing is that when the scientists opened the lid on the jar, the fleas still did not jump past where the lid used to be. In other words, a mental barrier had been formed in the collective unconscious of the fleas. And even more interesting is that when those fleas had children, those children that were never exposed to the lid at all still wouldn't jump past where the lid was. In other words, they adopted the expectations and the limitations of the other fleas in that jar. And so the solution for these fleas wasn't to try to will themselves past the invisible barrier, but rather to be placed in a new jar where the fleas in that jar had never been exposed to such a barrier, and thus the expectation and the limitation of that invisible barrier did not exist. And so once you put the other fleas in that jar, they would lose the old expectation and the old limitation. The same applies to you. Oftentimes when we have a problem, we try to will ourselves through or past that problem, and then when we can't, we end up frustrated and we end up being down on ourselves. But just like a flower needs the right soil to grow, humans need the right environments to thrive. And so maybe your problem is not that you keep procrastinating over and over again necessarily. Maybe it's not that you're a procrastinator. Maybe you should not identify yourself as a procrastinator. Maybe the issue is that you're in an environment where you're surrounded by procrastinators and you're surrounded by people who don't really have very many goals, who don't really work very hard. And so you being a part of that environment, it's very hard for you to not be a procrastinator and not be someone who doesn't work very hard. Because I guarantee you, if you place yourself in an environment where people were working very hard and people had a lot of goals, you would eventually end up being someone who also has a lot of goals and also works very hard. And so that's why one of my favorite ways to change human behavior is to change the environment that the human is in. Very overlooked, but very powerful. Now you might be sitting there thinking, well, I can't really change my physical environment because I need this job, or I'm still with my parents and I can't move out, or I need these roommates specifically, or whatever. And while the most impactful change in environment is a change in the physical environment, there are other changes that you can make to your environment, specifically your digital environment. And what I mean by that is that if you change the people that you follow on this phone right here, on the social media apps that are on these phones, if you change the people that you follow from negative people, people that are doing nothing with their lives, to positive people and people that are doing a lot with their lives, that will start to rub off on you. Now, it's not going to rub off on you in the same way that it would in a physical environment, but it's certainly going to rub off on you to some extent. And at the end of the day, your life is going to be way better if you're consuming positive content instead of negative content. And honestly, we're on these phones so much that our frame of reference for how humans are behaving are oftentimes derived from what we're seeing on these phones. And so if your frame of reference for how people are behaving is that they are setting goals, going after them, being disciplined, etc., then that will be the standard that you hold yourself up to. And you can set that frame of reference by altering what you follow here. Mental reframe number 2. Your problem is not procrastination. Your problem is your weak discipline muscle. Oftentimes when we procrastinate, it's not really a matter of procrastination. It's more so a matter of the fact that our discipline muscle is just too weak to even get started. And so it's not so much that we procrastinate because the thing is hard to do and so we just don't feel like doing it. It's more so that because the thing is hard to do, we need to exercise our discipline muscle, and our discipline muscle might not be strong enough yet to lift that kind of weight. And so So if you had a stronger discipline muscle, you would procrastinate less. But in that scenario, procrastination is the symptom and not the cause. And so if we want to fix a problem, we want to attack the cause instead of the symptoms. One way that you can attack the cause of a weak discipline muscle is to strengthen the discipline muscle. And one way that you can do that is by strengthening it day by day by day. Just focus on today. What can I do today to strengthen my discipline muscle? If you come across something that is tough to do and you feel yourself wanting to procrastinate, you can see that as an opportunity to strengthen your procrastination muscle. And if you do that over enough days, enough weeks, enough months, your discipline muscle will eventually be much stronger. And because you can lift more weight with that discipline muscle, you'll be much less likely to procrastinate in the future. But it starts with today. It starts with having a Kaizen mentality of how can I get just 1% better today? And then the next day you do the same thing, and then the next day you do the same thing, and eventually you get exponential returns. This approach of taking it day by day is actually very important, because if we try to build a skyscraper all at once, when we just start and we're laying down a couple of bricks, we could very easily become overwhelmed at the fact that, oh my God, I'm trying to build this amazing giant skyscraper and all I have is these 7 bricks. And when you're overwhelmed like that, you very often end up giving up. But if you just focus on, okay, let me lay down 5 bricks today. And then the next day you say, let me lay down 5 more bricks. And then the next day you say, let me lay down 5 more bricks. And as you do them, you end up gaining a sense of progress and achievement that keeps you going and prevents you from getting overwhelmed. So when all you do is focus on the today, it narrows your field of focus. It narrows your field of vision, and as a result of that, you can focus better, you can become less overwhelmed, you can focus on the task at hand, which is really the only thing that matters, is the task that you're doing right now. And then tomorrow, what will matter is the task that you're doing then. So not only are you reducing overwhelm, but you're focusing on what's important, which is just doing the thing today. And finally, mental reframe number 3, your problem is not procrastination, your problem is your decision-making habits. You may have heard the saying, first you make your habits, and then your habits make you. Or maybe the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Human beings largely operate based on habits. And I'm not just talking about the habits of putting on your seatbelt when you get in the car or brushing your teeth before you go to bed. I'm talking about habits of thinking. When something happens, how do you respond? Oftentimes we respond in ways that are very, very habitual. And so if when you were younger, you developed the habit of every time something gets hard, I run away or I ignore it or I procrastinate on it, now all of a sudden that has become your decision-making habit. And if you've been doing that for years, it's going to be very difficult to break that habit. Understanding how hard it is to break that habit helps you because you can tackle the problem instead of getting down on yourself because, damn it, I'm just a procrastinator. Instead of labeling yourself as a procrastinator, procrastination being the symptom, you tackle the root cause, which is your decision-making habit. And the way you remove a bad habit is by replacing it with a positive one. And so what I would recommend is that every time you feel resistance, every time you want to procrastinate, every time you want to run away, every time you want to bury your head in the sand, just try to actually do the thing just for 5 seconds, for a minute, for 5 minutes, for however long you can. Because oftentimes when you start doing it, you build momentum and then you don't want to stop. And as we were talking about before, the best way to build a skyscraper is to lay down 1 brick at a time. And so don't focus on the skyscraper. Don't try to be perfectly disciplined and never procrastinating, but rather focus on what you can do today to make yourself better today than you were yesterday. Focus on laying down the 5 bricks today, and then tomorrow focus on laying down the 5 bricks then, and so on and so forth. So if today you procrastinate 99 times, but you get it done once, okay, tomorrow try to get it done twice, then try to get it done 4 times, then try to get it done 5 and 7 and 8. Try to build in small increments and try to focus on what you can control today, because that's really all you can do. We don't control the future, we don't control the past. All we can do anything about really is today. Now, obviously what we do today impacts what's going to happen in the future, but all we really have control of is this present moment in time. And so narrowing your field of vision like that to today, to the present moment, helps reduce the amount of overwhelm that you would feel by procrastinating 97 times when you want to procrastinate 0. Because instead of trying to procrastinate 0, you're trying to procrastinate 96. And that's much more doable. Now, if you like these 3 mental reframes, I think you'll really like this video about 3 mindset shifts to be effortlessly disciplined. And as always, if you like this kind of content and want to see more and you want to join the community, make sure you subscribe, leave me a comment, letting me know what you liked and what you want to see more of. And if you want even more resources, you can click the link in the description box below. That will take you to my website and you can download the 4-step morning routine, a quick start guide to high performance and peace of mind. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.